Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody, for coming in. As you know, we're here to talk through our decision to let Chris Woodward go as our Major League manager, and we've asked Tony Beasley to be our interim manager. Let me talk a little bit about Woody first. I think it goes without saying for all of you that have worked with him on a regular basis, and certainly the way he's represented himself on the field with our fan base, in the community with our players. He's represented us, the organization, with class and dignity at every turn. He brought an unparalleled energy, passion, work ethic, genuine care for people, for the players. He was the same person every day with everybody, and just a real positivity in what were really challenging circumstances, from the pandemic, a rebuild, a multi-year rebuild that he's helped lead us through, and the lockout this year. So, great appreciation and admiration for the work he's put in and helped us in taking these steps. A little bit about expectations. I think that when you make these decisions, there's always where you're at relative to expectations. I think first, and we've been pretty straightforward with our fan base, with you all in the media, that we did not as a leadership team, CY and myself, ownership, we did not come into this season thinking we had put together a championship roster. We thought we'd taken a major step forward in talent from where we were a year ago. We certainly had aspirations maybe to overachieve some, and still do have those. But we were, and continue to be realistic about where we are. That said, we do think that we can be better than our record, and better than the way that we've played at times. And so that kind of leads to making the decision now, rather than waiting to the end of the year, and that we think we have an opportunity to begin addressing some items with a change in leadership style. Really, we're talking about kind of how we prepare, the style of play, the structure in which we put together our pregame that ultimately leads to how our players take the field and what our fans see every night. We think Tony's the right person at this point to lead us for this season. He has all the attributes that we're looking for. He has the respect of the staff, the respect of the players. He's an intelligent baseball veteran who's won at the minor league level, performed in a variety of roles, both here and elsewhere. And I think as we look towards this transition to build some momentum into next year, he's the right person for us as we move forward. So, again, I want to thank Woody on behalf of CY and ownership, our entire leadership team. I want to thank Woody again for all of his efforts into moving us forward. And then we can start with questions.
Raise your hand, wait for the microphone.
For either one of you, just the timing of this and kind of the thinking behind that, why it was important to make this move at this point in time.
Yeah, Emily, it's I think most importantly, we want to build momentum into 2023. I think there are some really positive things that are happening. We like some of the things that we're seeing. But we recognize there are things that we need to address moving forward, and we could either wait till after the season, or we could get ahead of that and start addressing those things now and creating momentum into next year. And we chose to do the latter in that regard. I think that's really ultimately why we chose to do it now versus wait to the end of the season.
Jeff?
When you talk about the preparation, how does that change when it's the same staff? What changes need to be made to help them prepare to take the field every day that you guys were just speaking of?
Well, I think it's just the overall structure, the environment. It's not necessarily the content of the preparation, but but the way it's utilized, the way we utilize meetings, the way we utilize different resources throughout the day, creating a structure that's really tailored towards winning a game every single day when we come in. And we felt like at times that got a little loose. But ultimately, I think that Bees will be the right person to get the best out of our staff and our players moving forward for the last 48 games.
Yeah, John, to the fans who would say you fired the manager, why is John Daniels still here after 6 straight losing seasons? Why does he not get any accountability for this? Is that a fair question?
Yeah.
And what would you say to that?
One, absolutely fair question. I kind of separate accountability and responsibility, and I take a lot of responsibility for our performance over the last 6 years, and we haven't been good enough. As far as my role in the organization, one, we have made a meaningful change in that, and bringing in CY and his role, and as well as others. But ultimately, this is a team effort. It's never, when we were good, it wasn't about me. It's always been a team effort, and I think we have a ways to go. We have a lot of good people here. And as far as my personal accountability or situation, I think that's something we'll address down the line.
Evan?
To the point, without going into specific examples, Chris, but you mentioned it's gotten loose a little bit at some point in times, and JD, you mentioned not played well at times. Do you feel like that's been a season-long issue, or do you feel like that's something that has kind of ramped up or been more evident in the last 6 weeks or so?
Well, I think it's a combination, Evan. I mean, I think it's reflective in the way we've played to some degree over the past 6 weeks. I think, coming into, the All-Star break, we're in okay position. We've fallen off, obviously. And I think that we see some things that we can tighten up in terms of reaching championship standards. And really, that's a big part of this decision. It's no fault of Woody's necessarily. Sometimes it just takes a different style, a different leadership voice to achieve those things, and that's why we made the decision.
Mike?
Just to pick up on the leadership style, what type of voice are you looking for, and does that voice long-term tend to come from somebody who already has Major League managerial experience?
Well, I think we're focused on the present right now. We know that Tony is the right person to stabilize us and help us finish strong here. And beyond that, we'll address really the search as it relates to external candidates, after the season.
And along those lines, why is Tony, is he managing here on an interim basis to become a candidate, or would you expect that he just automatically is a candidate at the end of the season?
Yeah, John, I think that, yes, he is a candidate, and I think that his record in terms of wins and losses will not necessarily reflect the level to which he is a candidate. I think that we're looking for more than that, and the impact in the clubhouse and the environment as much as we are on the field.
Other questions? Let's go back to Emily.
Have you all had conversations with players, either leading up to this decision or since the decision was made and Woody was informed?
I mean, Tony has today, just briefly. I mean, it's been a number of conversations between when we spoke with Woody earlier and obviously meeting here with you guys. We met with the team briefly, and Tony had CY was able to address them, and as well as Tony. Tony, I think, has had a chance to talk with a couple of players, but we haven't, beyond that, we have not.
Go back to Evan here.
You guys, another kind of buzz phrase has been championship culture, right? We've talked about championship culture for the past 2 years. Why hasn't a championship culture kind of taken root here?
Well, it doesn't happen overnight, Evan. I mean, it's a process, and I think some of that is based on where we were last year and committed to a rebuilding process. It doesn't happen overnight, and we recognize, as JD said, we didn't expect to take go worst to first this season, the culture builds, and Woody has had an impact on that culture, a very positive impact in a lot of ways. This is about moving forward, what the next step is, and building that culture, and we feel that the time is right, and that was a big part of the decision.
Chris, I know you said the manager search is down the line, but I'm sure there'll be discussions in the meantime. Can you tell us a little how that works between you and JD? Is it collaborative? Is it your decision? Is it his decision?
It's a full partnership, absolutely, and it's beyond me and JD. It's our entire front office. It's our ownership. It'll be an extensive process that we put together involving a number of people. As JD said, we win as a team, we lose as a team, and certainly we will be on the same page in terms of who we choose to manage the team moving forward, as we have been today with Tony.
Andrew.
Yes, for either one of you, with this change in managers, do you have a specific objective for the last 48 games in order to strengthen Beasley's chances of landing the job full-time? Do you have any specific expectations for the remainder of the season?
I think most importantly, we want to continue to create competitive, energetic team that takes the field night in, night out, prepared to win. And I think that we want to see improvement in our fundamentals, just the basic fundamentals. I think it's something that we haven't executed those to the level we need to become a championship team. Concentration in those areas, and then just from a teammate aspect, making sure that we create an environment where our players, our staff, all of us as an organization, bring out the best in one another. I think those are the three main things.
Go Jeff and then Eric.
So, what was the conversation like with Chris, and how did he take the news?
He was, as you would expect, just an unbelievable professional. Two of us sat down with him earlier, emotional on some level, but he was really appreciative of the opportunity. We talked about a little bit of kind of where we are as a club, and I think he shares the opinion that we're not as far off as our record may indicate, and we thanked him a lot of the same things I said earlier. We thanked him directly, and then he had an opportunity to talk to some of the staff members and talk to other people he wanted to connect with.
I think Jeff, as JD said, he handled it with class, with dignity, with integrity, nothing but a positive attitude. He's a tremendous human being, tremendous person, and very grateful for the leadership he's provided us.
Eric.
CY, I'm wondering if you can share with us what your message was when you addressed the team.
Yeah, I don't want to get into too many specifics there, Eric, but ultimately this is about moving forward and how we want to finish the season, and we felt like Bees is the right person to create the best environment possible for us to have a solid finish here.
Ozzie.
Yeah, will the coaching staff remain the same, and who's going to be your third base coach?
Corey Ragsdale is going to move from first base to third base, and Josh Johnson's going to come up from our minor league system and will coach first base as well as coaching the outfielders. The rest of the staff remains the same.
Jonah.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I know you mentioned you spoke to the team. Obviously, Corey coming here, Woody was kind of a big, part of that decision. Did Seager say anything in that discussion with the team, and is there any concern that might, muddy the waters a little bit, relationship-wise?
We'll keep individual conversations private, and we're not worried about any waters being muddied.
Bill.
How do you account for the lack of success in one-run games this season and lack of success against the Astros, and were those factors in the decision?
First, the Astros are a really good team. That's probably the biggest. They're extremely talented and they play very well. And we've had a number of one-run games against them as well. But I think the one-run games, there's an element of luck. I think there's also an element that you make your own luck. And some of the small things that we are alluding to, there's rarely one element that goes into when a game is close that is the reason why a game is either won or lost. Right? There's so many events that happen. I think what CY touched on earlier, what we're talking about, and it impacts these one-run games, is the process and the attention to detail, the fundamentals that lead up to those games, where hopefully you're slowly, every time you do something right during a game, you're slowly moving the odds a little bit more in your favor and allow your players to perform at their highest level. So that's probably the best way I can answer that.
We'll take a few more. Evan Grant.
When you talk about preparation, do you feel like you guys need more uniformity in the way this team prepares? Are there too many guys preparing in different manners for the game? Does that impact anything?
Well, I think, Evan, too, baseball's a unique sport where there's a team element and there's an individual element. And as a former player, I can relate to both. And so I think there's a balance of allowing each individual to prepare in ways they need to, and then collectively making sure the team's on the same page to understand exactly how a game is to be won that night. So it's not specific to one or the other. It's really a combination of both. We love our players having that individuality and freedom to prepare as they see fit, but also making sure that we get enough of the team preparation. And that's not specific to, I think more so that's on like the fundamental side and making sure that we're executing the plays that need to be executed on a nightly basis to win, to reach a championship caliber.
What are you hoping to gain the most clarity on as you close out the season here?
Well, I think that, obviously it's been, we've been tied up with the draft and trade deadline and haven't done, we're not finished evaluating in terms of what this team needs moving forward to be a playoff caliber team in 2023. But I want to be very clear to our fans, that is our expectation. Obviously, I think on the pitching side, we see there's room for improvement. Defensively, I think there's room for improvement there. And offensively, we've done some things really well, but I think there's room for improvement in that facet of the game as well. So, ultimately, I think improving each of those areas and doing it in a way that is consistent with a disciplined, fundamentally sound team is the way we see this coming together. But I want to recognize the positives that have happened. I think we're 5th in the American League in runs scored. Our run differential is a -2 at this point. With some small improvements, all of a sudden we're in a playoff race. And so it may not be this year, but we recognize that this is probably closer than, we believe it's closer than maybe others do.
Okay, we'll take 2 or 3 more. Jeff, and then Joan in the back.
On everything you guys have said, especially in the open pandemic season, rebuild, lockout, screwy spring, did Chris Woodward get a fair shake to be a manager? A successful manager?
Yeah. Like I said, I think he had a challenging hand from a standpoint of ultimate wins and losses. Those elements, and really the biggest one is just the rebuild. That we were kind of in between when he was hired. We really committed to a rebuild in the middle of his time here. He was fully on board with that. He embraced kind of the move to a younger club. I don't know your term, how I would characterize it, but I think he made the most of what he had to work with.
Yeah, kind of in that line, in the line of questioning is how much of this, and really just over the last few years, is on Woody, so much as maybe the teams he was dealt, the lineups he was dealt, the roster, and then maybe to make this decision where it hasn't really come to fruition is. I'm just curious, where do you guys kind of reconcile that versus his coaching versus everything that's going on off the field?
Yeah, I think to your point about Tim's point earlier, I mean, I think the talent and the roster construction is a bigger factor in terms of our wins and losses over the last several years. To CY's point, a previous question, as far as we look to move forward, there were elements that we wanted to see addressed differently, and so they're not. I think both things need to be addressed, and so the accountability for the roster ultimately sits with me and our group. But the style, the way that we're going about improving our play on the field is what we're looking to address with this move.
One more, if there's anything. Levi, last question.
Just another question from like a timing standpoint. When we talked to you guys a couple of weeks ago, right after the trade deadline, and you had been wrapped up in draft and deadline and everything else, you said you were not quite ready to make that evaluation. So I'm curious how much of this decision was based on evaluation from the last 2 weeks, and how much of that was the ball already rolling and just kind of confirmed what you.
It's been an ongoing evaluation.
Anything else? Good?